She laughed at the maid in front of everyone, thinking no one important would care. But what happened next at the party turned the room silent and left her reputation shattered forever. The ballroom sparkled under golden chandeliers as some of the city's wealthiest gathered for Lillian Cross's annual charity gala. Designer gowns, champagne towers, a string quartet tucked into the corner. It was a night for photos, networking, and whispers behind manicured hands. Among the crowd, moving silently with a silver tray in hand, was Maria Flores, 28, the maid Lillian had recently hired. Maria wasn't dressed in couture. No diamonds glittered on her, just a crisp black and white uniform and soft, humble eyes. And to Lillian, that made her invisible. As the clock struck 9, Lillian clinked her champagne glass for attention. "A toast," she called, smiling wide, "to hard work, success, and—" She paused, eyes darting to Maria, who stood quietly by the fountain. "Knowing your place." Laughter rippled through the crowd, forced, nervous. Then Lillian turned fully to Maria. "Tell us, dear, how does it feel serving people who probably earn more in a week than you do in a year?" A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. Maria flushed, her knuckles tightening around the tray, but she said nothing. She simply lowered her gaze, bowed slightly, and continued her work. Lillian chuckled, tossing her hair. "Some people are just born for certain roles, aren't they?" More laughter. Louder this time. Maria turned to leave, shame burning in her chest. But before she could escape into the kitchen, a voice spoke up from across the room. Clear, calm, commanding. "That's interesting, Lillian," the man said, stepping forward, "because you're insulting the woman who actually owns half this hotel." The room froze. Glasses tilted mid-air. Smiles dropped, and all eyes shifted, not to Maria, but to the man walking toward her, Evan Hartley, one of the most powerful real estate magnates in the state. And the look he gave Maria was pure respect, because what no one at that glittering party knew was that Maria Flores wasn't just a maid. She was an undercover boss, and the truth was about to set the room, and Lillian's reputation, on fire. The silence in the ballroom was so sharp it seemed to slice through the glittering air. Lillian's smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face. "Wait, what are you talking about, Evan?" she said, forcing a laugh. Evan didn't smile back. He walked directly to Maria and extended his hand with a nod of deep respect. "Maria Flores isn't just a maid," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's my business partner, co-owner of the Hartley Flores Hospitality Group, the very group that owns this hotel and the 5-star resort you're begging for sponsorship from." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Maria set down her tray carefully and stood straighter, her uniform suddenly looking more like armor than subservience. Lillian blinked rapidly, stammering. But she's wearing—" "Because she chose to," Evan said, cutting her off. "To understand how the staff are treated in her properties, to see the truth when no one thinks she's watching." A few guests shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. Some discreetly stepped away from Lillian, their smiles gone, their eyes wary. Maria finally spoke, her voice steady but quiet. "I didn't come here tonight to shame anyone. I came to learn. To see how kindness, real kindness, looks when no one expects anything in return." She looked Lillian dead in the eyes. "And what I learned is that titles and gowns don't make someone better." Character does. Lillian flushed deep red, her hands trembling slightly. Evan stepped closer to Maria, standing proudly beside her. "Every server here tonight, every worker, they matter more than the name on the invitation list." He turned to the crowd. "If you don't know how to treat people with dignity, you don't belong in any building we own." An uneasy murmur filled the room. Phones started buzzing. Whispers turned into sharp glances. The power in the room had shifted, and it wasn't wearing designer heels. It was standing in front of them. In a simple black and white uniform, with more power and dignity than any diamond-studded name tag could ever buy. And in that moment, everyone realized the richest woman in the room wasn't Lillian. It was the one they had tried to look through, and could no longer ignore. As the realization spread through the ballroom like wildfire, guests began to distance themselves from Lillian with a kind of quiet panic, clutching their glasses tighter, whispering behind hands, taking deliberate steps away. Lillian tried to recover, pasting a strained smile on her face. "It was just a joke," she said too brightly. "Light-hearted fun. Surely you understand, Maria." Maria tilted her head slightly, her gaze calm, almost pitying. "Mockery dressed as humor is still cruelty," she said softly. "You didn't see me because you didn't want to." The string quartet faltered, then stopped altogether. Even the waitstaff, those in matching uniforms like Maria's, stood a little taller now, pride flickering in their posture. Evan cleared his throat. "For those interested, the Hartley Flores Hospitality Group will be reevaluating its sponsorships and partnerships after tonight." The hint was clear. And just like that, faces that had once laughed with Lillian now turned cold, indifferent. No one wanted to be associated with someone who had mocked kindness in front of power wearing humility. A reporter from a local magazine, sensing a moment too juicy to miss, snapped a photo. Maria standing tall, Lillian visibly shrinking. It would be the image that trended by morning with headlines like, "Billionaire Maid exposes society's cruelty, a lesson in grace and power." The maid who owned the room. Lillian made one final desperate attempt. "Maria, surely we can talk, maybe even work something out." But Maria didn't flinch. "I'm not interested in apologies made out of fear," she said quietly. "Only the ones made out of understanding." And with that, she turned, her head high, her steps graceful, her silence louder than any microphone could ever be. Evan offered his arm. Maria hesitated for a heartbeat, then accepted. And together they walked out, leaving the glittering, broken facade behind, while Lillian Cross stood under the chandeliers, surrounded by wealth, but more alone than she had ever been. Because sometimes, the sharpest fall doesn't come from losing money. It comes from losing the respect you never even noticed you needed. By the next morning, Maria Flores' name wasn't whispered in shameful corners. It was headlining news across the city. Talk shows buzzed about her. Business forums praised her boldness. Social media exploded with clips of the moment she calmly dismantled an entire room without raising her voice. Maria didn't bask in the attention. She quietly returned to her work, real work, reviewing scholarship programs, expanding employment opportunities at her properties, and launching a new initiative, the Flores Foundation, Dignity in Work. Its mission was simple, to remind the world that titles don't make people valuable, hearts do. Meanwhile, Lillian Cross faced consequences beyond what she could have imagined. Sponsorships were pulled. Charity invitations dried up. Her brand deals crumbled overnight. No public apology could erase the fact that when she had the chance to show grace, she chose cruelty. And the world had seen it. Weeks later, Maria hosted a quiet gala of her own. Not a grand spectacle, but a heartfelt gathering of hotel staff, community leaders, and young students receiving their first scholarships. At the end of the night, Evan raised a glass. "To Maria," he said, "for proving that you can wear humility like armor, and walk taller than any crown could ever make you." Maria smiled, touched but not changed. Because for her, this was never about revenge. It was about restoring a truth the world had forgotten. That real power doesn't humiliate. It lifts. It heals. It remembers. A photo from that night hangs in the entry hall of every Flores property today. Maria, standing with workers, chefs, housekeepers, drivers, smiling wide. The plaque beneath it reads, "Respect isn't given to the rich. It's given to those who remember that no one is beneath kindness. Because the richest soul in any room is the one who sees everyone in it."